Welcome back, folks, to Bernette's Bizarre but True Tale Show. I am Bernette, and as always, I am happy to be here. Now, this story is where the strange, the unsettling, and the almost unbelievable are pulled out of the shadows and placed under the light. Today, we are checking out one of the weirdest modern cases connected to the Jeffrey Epstein files. But listen carefully, this episode is not really about what Epstein was accused of. Not tonight. Tonight, we are looking at the places he owned, the residences he kept, and the bigger question hiding behind them. Why did he need so many private doors, so many guarded rooms, and so many locations designed to keep the outside world guessing? Epstein's main residences, a map of locked doors. To understand Epstein's world, we have to stop thinking of these homes as ordinary luxury properties, because they were not simply places to sleep, entertain, or show off money. No, they formed a trail: Manhattan, Palm Beach, Little St. James, Zorro Ranch, Paris, and the neighboring Great St. James. Each address had its own atmosphere. Each one offered a different kind of privacy, and when you view them together, they begin to look less like a collection of homes and more like a network built around distance, access, and control. In New York, the mansion on East 71st Street stood like a fortress hidden in plain sight, grand, polished, and surrounded by the city's noise. In Palm Beach, the waterfront estate became central to the first police investigation, a sunlit property that would later carry a much darker reputation. In the Virgin Islands, Little St. James turned isolation into theater, with villas, private access, and strange landmarks that seemed to invite rumor. And nearby Great St. James, that expanded the footprint even further, adding another island to the puzzle. Then came Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, vast, quiet, and remote enough for silence to feel almost engineered. And across the Atlantic, the Paris apartment added an international layer, showing that Epstein's movements were not confined to one city, one state, or even one country. So the unsettling question is not just where these residences were, it is why the map stretches the way it does, from crowded streets to private islands, from beachfront gates to desert roads, from visible wealth to places where visibility itself disappears. The fake temple and the sunken sundial and the cursed tiki bar and sirens. Now, in every major crime story, there are places that become part of the evidence, not because walls can testify, not because land can speak, but because certain locations seem to preserve the shape of what happened there. For Jeffrey Epstein, two properties keep pulling the story back into the dark. One is an island in the Caribbean, bright on the surface, but surrounded by questions that will not sink. The other is a remote ranch in New Mexico, where state investigators say the answers they need may still be buried behind federal redactions. Tonight we follow the trail through Little St. James, Zorro Ranch, and the symbols that made both places impossible to ignore. The fake temple, the sunken sundial, the cursed tiki bar, and the sirens. The island that pretended to be paradise. Little St. James was not introduced to the public as a crime scene. At first glance, it looked like a private paradise. Shoreline, villas, winding paths, and a kind of staged luxury built to impress from a distance. But here's the thing. True crime footage changes the way a place is seen. The longer the camera lingers, the less decorative everything feels. The island begins to look less like an escape and more like a stage where every path leads out of view. And then, at the top of the island, stood the structure people kept calling a temple. Blue and white stripes, a gold dome, statues positioned like silent guards. Public reporting and official descriptions have referred to it as a music pavilion. Online speculation has taken it much further. But even without the rumors, the building unsettles the eye. It looks ceremonial, but not sacred. It looks symbolic, but never explained. And that is exactly why it lingers. Then there is the sunken sundial, a circular mark cut into the landscape, most clearly understood from above. It may have been architectural design, it may have been decorative, but in the visual language of this case, it feels like something stamped into the island itself. Not proof, not confession, just a mark that refuses to feel ordinary. Near the water, the cursed tiki bar and the sirens add another layer of unease. A tiki bar should suggest escape, music, easy laughter. But here, it feels different. It feels like an abandoned set after the actors have vanished. And the sirens' figures from myth associated with danger and temptation turn the shoreline into a warning sign that nobody admits to placing there. The desert that swallowed sound. Now shift the scene. The second property could not look more different. Zorro Ranch sits in the high desert near Stanley, New Mexico. No bright beaches, no tropical stagecraft, just thousands of acres, long roads, outbuildings, cabins, a mansion, and an airstrip. From above, the ranch does not look theatrical. It looks empty, and sometimes emptiness is more frightening than spectacle. Investigators studying a place like this are not only looking at buildings, they are looking at access, distance, privacy, control. On the island, secrecy was surrounded by spectacle. At Zorro Ranch, secrecy was surrounded by land. The camera pulls back, and instead of revealing answers, the property seems to swallow them. Then, in July 2026, the story sharpened. New Mexico Attorney General Raul Torres publicly accused acting U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche and the U.S. Department of Justice of hindering the state's criminal investigation by withholding unredacted Epstein records connected to Zorro Ranch. And according to Torres, those records contain the names of survivors, witnesses, alleged co-conspirators, and other individuals central to determining what happened in New Mexico. According to the New Mexico Department of Justice, more than 130 days had passed since the state's initial request. More than 130 days. Torres described that delay as unreasonable and warned that time itself was damaging the case. Witnesses could become harder to locate, memories could fade, and physical or documentary evidence could become harder to authenticate. The federal DOJ has said it responded to New Mexico's request and stands ready to assist the investigation, but that dispute exposes a central tension in the case. State officials say they need unredacted records to move forward, while the most important names and connections remain hidden from public view. The paper trail. In a case like this, the paper trail matters because it may be the only thing still connecting people, places, and dates. A redaction is not just black ink on a page. It can be a missing witness, a missing flight, a missing corroborating detail, a missing link between allegation and prosecution. It can be the exact shape of the silence. That is why the dispute between Todd Blanche, the DOJ, and New Mexico is not a minor procedural disagreement, not even close. For investigators, access to names can determine whether a case advances or stalls. Without unredacted records, the state says it cannot fully identify survivors, witnesses, staff, or alleged accomplices who may be essential to the investigation. Now place those two properties side by side. Little St. James gives us images that are hard to forget. The fake temple, the sunken sundial, the cursed tiki bar, and the sirens. Zorro Ranch gives us something quieter but just as troubling: distance, missing context, and a legal fight over what investigators are allowed to see. One property became infamous for what it revealed. The other remains ominous because of what it may still conceal. What the records still hide, and here is what makes this story so strange. The details do not need to be exaggerated. A temple that may not have been a temple, a sundial cut into the island, a tiki bar and siren figures that now feel like remnants from a performance nobody wants to explain. A desert ranch large enough for distance itself to become part of the story, and a records dispute that may determine whether New Mexico investigators can reconstruct what happened there before the trail goes colder. In true crime, mystery is not always created by what is unknown. Sometimes it is created by what is known but withheld, by names covered in black ink, by files that exist but remain incomplete, by locations photographed from every angle, yet still seeming to hold something back. until the unredacted records are opened. The fake temple, the sunken sundial, the cursed techie bar, and the sirens remain part of the visual record. Zorro Ranch remains part of the investigative record. And between them sits the question every true crime story eventually reaches: who still knows more than they have said, and how long can silence keep protecting the answer? And then the story takes another strange turn. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump have been linked to plans for an exclusive island-style retreat built for the ultra-wealthy, another landscape shaped around privacy, privilege, and separation from ordinary life. And I cannot help but ask the question any true crime narrator would ask. When a private paradise is built for people who already live behind gates, what exactly is it meant to keep out, and what might it keep hidden? I explore that question in my book Flamingo Revolution, which follows the location and the deeper story behind the proposed retreat. I will link it in the description. So that is where I will leave it for now. Two properties, two kinds of silence, and too many unanswered questions. If this episode made you look twice at places built behind gates, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts below, because I want to know what you think. And next time, we move from private islands and desert ranches into one of the darkest rumors to survive the shadows of the Second World War. Secret laboratories, forbidden experiments, and whispers that scientists tried to cross a line nature was never meant to cross. What did American forces really find when the war ended? What became of the specimens people claimed were moved east? And how much of this story is documented history, and how much belongs to something darker, stranger, and harder to prove? Sensitive topic warning. The next episode will discuss disturbing allegations involving wartime experimentation, human and animal suffering, and claims that remain difficult to verify. Listener discretion is advised.